Allow your eyes to gently close and just take a moment and allow yourself to fully arrive. Draw your awareness from the sounds and sensations in the world around you, from the thought forms that are growing and popping like bubbles that children blow. Pull the awareness from these things and bring that awareness deep into yourself. Withdraw your attention. Just gently unhook that attention from being focused on all of that happening around you. What noises are there? What other people are doing? What smells are coming from the kitchen? Just unhook your awareness from that. And gently draw that awareness deep into the self. If the mind wanders, don't worry, that's the nature of the mind. But just bring it back gently. Just keep unhooking it from the world around you. And draw that attention deep into your being. Draw it into your breath. Draw it into the core of your being. Just keep drawing that awareness in. Draw the power of the mind's eye, keeping your two eyes still closed, but draw that power of the mind's eye and focus it from the inside onto your third eye, just between the two eyebrows. What do we call the Agya chakra? Just allow that power of the mind's eye, the inner eye, to focus from within on the third eye. Don't try to force anything, but just gently draw that energy of sight into your third eye center. Just keep sending that Shakti, that energy of the power of sight into the third eye. And see whether you can have an experience. Don't force it, but see if you can have an experience of that eye starting to open from the inside. Slowly and gently, bring the palms of your hands together at chest level and gently rub them against each other. Press the palms of your hands into your closed eyes. Slowly open your eyes into the palms of your hands and then lower your hands. Welcome to Satsang. So beautiful to have you all here with us. We'll start as usual with a question that's come in advance, and then we'll open it up to any questions that anyone here has, as well as to our online audience joining us on different platforms. If there's any questions that come in from there, we will open it to them as well. I'm going through some things in my personal life, and it's taking everything I have to stay grounded and centered. When people ask me if I'm okay, I lie, and I say everything is fine. I don't like to lie, but I don't want to talk about what's really going on. How can I stay honest in the midst of all that's happening? When Bhagwan Krishna speaks about the right speech, tapas of speech, dharmic speech, yogic speech, right speech, he says it must be three things: kind, true, and beneficial. Those are the criteria. Now, if you're going through something personal and somebody asks you about it, now, on the one hand, to give them the full story would be true, but it's neither kind to yourself, nor is it beneficial to either you or them, unless there's someone you want to confide in. And of course, I would always recommend having at least one person you can confide in. One person at least with whom you can be totally open and honest. But there's no reason to put your inner struggles on display for everyone who just asks, hey, how are you? In many cases, people aren't ready for it. They don't necessarily actually want all of it. We ask, how are you, almost habitually. In fact, there's a great story of an enlightened master who somebody says to him, how are you? And he says, you asked me that this morning. And the person who asked him said, well, yes, but now it's evening. And he said, and why do you believe that I would change how I am from morning to evening? Like, why would my experience of the self change from morning till evening? And I love that because we all have this habit of pretty much every time you see someone. Maybe we see someone 10, 15 times a day. Hey, how are you? Because how most of us are goes up and down constantly. So you ask me once and I say, oh, I'm great. An hour later you ask me and I say, oh my God, this happened. An hour later you ask me and again I'm great or I'm something else. The whole nature of how most of us are is so dependent on what's happening around us. That's why in meditation you'll notice I kept saying in different ways, unhook that attention from the outer world, bring it in. Well, it's not only something that's necessary for us to meditate, but it's also a beautiful skill to learn for life. It doesn't mean we don't pay attention. It doesn't mean I don't notice the table in front of me and therefore trip over it and fall. It doesn't mean that I don't have the ability to perceive what's happening. Of course we do. But it means that who I am, how I experience myself, how I am, isn't hooked into these things. It's raining, so I'm miserable. The rain stops, the sun comes out, I'm great. Then it starts raining again, I'm miserable. People are nice to me, I'm happy. They're not nice to me, I'm miserable. If we can unhook that deep awareness, attention, focus, consciousness, a bunch of different words with slightly different meanings, but for this purpose, it's all about where we are directing our ability to pay attention, where we are directing our minds. Is it within ourselves? Or is it on everything happening around us? And on that basis, we determine how we are. So, as far as the person who's asked this question, you should also recognize that the majority of people who ask how you are actually are not even really looking for the full story. A lot of times if someone says, how are you? And you actually do give them the full thing. Well, my God, I'm really struggling. And you can just start to see them sort of figure out how they're going to escape from the conversation. Like really all they wanted was a one word. I'm fine, I'm good, I'm great, how are you? It's a social nicety. It's a rare person who actually asks, how are you? Wanting a deeply honest answer. So you shouldn't feel badly not giving people something that most of them aren't looking for anyway. That certainly isn't kind to you or beneficial to you to bare your heart to someone who may or may not be trustworthy. They may or may not be someone who really can hold what you're sharing. So there's no need to give it. To say you're fine is not a lie. Because even though you are going through some things, you still are fine. Fine doesn't mean every single thing in my life is going exactly the way that if I had a magic wand, I would make it. Fine doesn't mean I have managed to completely overcome anger in my life. I've managed to completely overcome restlessness or frustration or boredom or jealousy or anguish. If that were the definition of fine, none of us would be able to say we were fine. We're still human. Fine means who I am in this moment and in every moment is okay. When I was growing up, I don't know how many of you are from America and around my age range, but when I was growing up, there was a book that I had, all of my friends had, everybody had, that was called You Are Okay. Or something like that. The theme was You Are Okay. And the book was basically, it was for young readers, and the book was I'm okay, and you're okay, and we're all okay. And it was all about whatever happens in the world, we are okay. And, it was a book for 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds. But it was such a beautiful lesson. I'm okay. Yes, my brother stole my thing, or my sister did this, or my mom that, or my dad this, or my teacher that. But I'm okay. So saying I'm fine or I'm okay, instead of thinking of it as a lie, think of it as an assertion of truth that is actually deeper than what you're struggling with. Your okayness runs much deeper than your struggles. And so you're actually affirming to the other person and to yourself at that moment your actual okayness. So do not feel badly, but just as you're saying it, see if instead of your mind thinking this is a lie because I'm actually sad or confused or angry, troubled, frustrated, instead of the mind thinking that that's a lie and thinking that your frustration or your jealousy or your anger supersedes your okayness, allow saying to others, I'm okay, to actually be an opportunity for you to remember deeply that you are okay, that you are fine, that you're going to make it through this. We all go through things. We all go through times. And this too shall pass. There will be a time when you will look on this in the past tense. So it's a time to do the work, to go through it, to create spaciousness for it. But don't think that your okayness is a lie. It isn't. You are okay. Whatever you're going through. Questions? Yes. Yes. There's a microphone. He's gonna. Yes. Thank you.
How to continue to be calm and composed? Once we get to office, I work in corporate America, where there is so much happening, non-stop interaction, and at the end of the day, I realize like, oh, how did I do that? Because I started a day very calm and composed.
Yes. How do we stay calm and composed in the office? And of course, this could be calm and composed in school or calm and composed wherever we go, where we are in a situation of activity. By continuing to go in. Continue to go in. It doesn't mean that you don't speak to people or interact, but it means that you develop tools and techniques. The word sadhana means spiritual practice. It's a practice. We use whatever works. I have found personally, my breath is my biggest ally. It's with me wherever I am. I can anchor my awareness in my breath low in my abdomen, which automatically calms down the nervous system, automatically brings the awareness within. Just try it, even as you're sitting here, eyes open, doesn't matter. Just see what happens when you draw your awareness of your breath as low in the abdomen as you can, instead of breathing from the chest or the rib cage. Drop it deeply. And you notice an almost immediate recentering, regrounding, withdrawing. You can do it eyes opened, eyes closed, standing, sitting, in a boardroom, in a meeting, while someone's shouting at you. It's a tool that you have at your disposal all the time. And it's a tool that no situation or person can ever take away from you. Right? I mean, we can't all sit in a board meeting with our jap malas, closing our eyes, doing our jap in the meeting. Clearly, people would expect us to sit there with our eyes open, paying attention. We wouldn't necessarily want our lips to be always chanting. I mean, we try always to be chanting our mantra, but I could imagine bosses, I could imagine colleagues who would be trying to talk to you and not necessarily take it so well if your lips kept moving like you weren't listening to them. But the breath is something that no one even has to know you're doing. So no matter how low on a hierarchical totem pole you may be in the office place, and therefore how subjected to other people's rules you might be, anchoring in your breath is always something you can do. And it always calms you, it always centers you. The mantra is the next really powerful thing. If you can actually have your lips moving, even though you're not speaking it out loud, but if the lips can move, it adds a whole other element of power to it. But even if you can't have your lips moving because people notice and they tell you to stop doing that, well, you can still keep chanting. Nobody knows what's going on in your mind. Pujya Swamiji always says it's so great that God did not put a screen on our forehead and what we're thinking got relayed on that screen. So you can be thinking whatever you want. Your mind can be doing whatever you want. So chant your mantra. Somebody's talking to you, they're telling you about their weekend, they're complaining to you about some coworker, they're criticizing what you've done. Just keep chanting your mantra. Make sure that you're paying enough attention that you don't make the same mistake again an hour later. But the mantra can be going on at the same time while you're also listening. You're taking it in too. And then see how many times during the day. And I was just saying, I think it was last night or the night before, every time before you eat, every time before you drink water, just use it as an opportunity, a quick moment. Close your eyes, reconnect. Be grateful to God. Whatever language you use, doesn't matter. But just anchor. Maybe something as simple as thank you, God, for this food. Thank you, God, for this water. It may be something more. It may be something deeper. But whatever it is, just use it to connect yourself. And just take a moment. You don't have to go into 20 minutes of chanting mantras before you start to eat. But a few minutes. Reconnect. Close your eyes. So just create tools that work for you. You can set your phone to actually give you little notifications. Breathing notifications. Remember to breathe. Just something. It's just about remembrance. As you said, you get home at the end of the day and you're like, how did that happen? Because we didn't remember all day long. So just create little tools to help you remember all day long. It's like people will frequently carry a picture of their loved one in their wallets. Well, why do they do that? They know what the person looks like. They know they love them. But something happens when every time you open your wallet to buy a cup of coffee or a sandwich or fill your car up with gas, and suddenly you see the picture of the loved one. It's just a quick momentary smile, joy in the midst of your day. In the same way, just set up a series of different tools, different techniques. Put something in your wallet every time you open it that's going to remind you. And just stay connected. It's practice, but you'll get there. Beautiful. Yes.
Namaskaram, Sadhviji. Thank you for that answer. My question is related to love and especially romantic love. So, what to do when you fall out of love of your romantic with your romantic partner, and especially if the other person hasn't and want to continue to be in a relationship, but you don't want to?
Okay. We fall in love and we fall out of love. So the problem begins before we fall out of love. When we set up relationships that are based on how that person makes us feel in a particular moment, feel at a particular time in our life, how they respond to what we're going through. I think about it like other games that I used to have when I was a kid, little blocks. It was days before iPads and video games and mobile phones and whatnot. So we actually had, blocks and things to play with. And there used to be all sorts of different types of games where you'd have a board, and the board would have different shapes, and then you'd have different things to put in the shape, and you had to match the square with the square hole. So you'd have a square-shaped peg thing, and you had to match the square-shaped peg into the square-shaped hole. It was, jigsaw puzzles for 3-year-olds. Before you were old enough to do an actual jigsaw puzzle, it was the most basic form of a jigsaw puzzle. What fits in this hole? Square hole, square peg. Triangle hole, find the triangle, fit it in the hole. And a lot of us approach relationships like that. We fall in love a lot because someone fills our metaphoric hole. I suffer in a certain way. I feel like I'm lacking in a certain way. I'm yearning for a particular thing. And this person is the metaphoric peg that fits my metaphoric hole. They are able to give what I want, what I think I need in that moment. And so it fits. It feels great. We love it. We're in love. There's passion. There's everything. The problem is that we don't stay stagnant in our lives. We grow. We change. That which I needed based on my psychological, emotional, mental framework decades ago is very different from what I need today. That which I'm able to provide someone else with, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, today is very different from what I was able to provide decades ago. If our love is based on how well your peg fits in my hole, we're going to fall out of love as we each change shape. We may have begun as my triangle shape and your triangle peg, but now my shape is a square and your peg is a circle, and it doesn't work quite so well. And this is why when we embark on a relationship that's deep, that's meant to be long-lasting, especially if it's going to be a marriage, we need to make sure that there's more to it than just how well we fit together in this particular intersection of time and space. That there's a real commitment to actually growing together, to shaping ourselves together, You know, we talk about falling in love, but love is actually something that we should be rising in. And it's not always easy, and it's not always something that comes automatically. It takes work. When you find that you're in a situation where you have fallen out of love, it's going to depend. I mean, I don't know whether you're married. I don't know if there are actually children involved. But there's a whole other series of components, because if we're just dating, there's no marriage, there's no kids, there's no nothing, okay, you move on. You do it as gently and as lovingly as you can so you don't hurt the other person, but okay, you move on. But if you've married and there's kids, young kids, then there's a whole other ballgame going on. Because then it's no longer just simply about, well, you know, you don't fit me perfectly anymore. Then we've got so many other things to take into consideration. So my suggestion would be, first, see if you can figure out how to rekindle the love. A lot of times what happens in our life is we move from our hearts into our heads. So if you imagine just the trajectory of a typical love relationship, we meet, we fall in love, it's beautiful, it's passionate, we date, we love it, we love each other, we get married, we have a honeymoon, it's beautiful, then, and we're in our hearts, we're fully in our hearts. Then, there's jobs, there's kids, there's a mortgage in the house, there's in-laws, there's decisions to be made, challenges arise. And we shift from our hearts into our heads. Our heads are the troubleshooters, the problem solvers, the logistic managers. So we're now functioning essentially as colleagues in a workplace, where the children and the home and the chores and the in-laws have become our work. And we simply are sharing cubicle space, divvying up duties in this workspace. And the very first thing that I would suggest is, before you decide you're really out of love, see whether you can create beautiful opportunities to drop from the head back into your heart. See what happens when you actually go back into the heart. Take some time away together. Can the in-laws look after the kids for a few days? Can you go and just take a few days, just the two of you? Away from work, away from responsibilities, away from errands and chores and demands. See what happens when you drop back into your heart. Because you may actually find that that love is really still there, but that it's no longer as present in the head-centered, to-do list model of running families the way that most of us do. And if you find that in those days alone together, there is still love, then figure out how in your lives you can really make that a priority. Because I'll tell you one thing, the very best thing as parents, the very best thing you can do for children is to have their parents be in a loving relationship. Much more important than the money, the toys, the opportunities, the school, the extracurricular activities. The single most important predictor of mental health, happiness in children is the happiness of their parents. Doesn't matter what else you give them. But if the two of you are stressed, fighting, distracted, disconnected, you're not doing your kids any favors. So if it means working a little bit less, having a little bit less of an income, canceling a few of the extracurricular activities that are stressing you all out of getting to and from them, rearranging your life in such a way that you actually stay connected and in love and peaceful and joyful individually and together, it's the best thing you can give your kids. The very best thing. And if after all of that, you really find there is no more love here at all, then you're going to have to look at your situation. And again, if you're dating, it's going to be a lot easier to navigate than if you're in a marriage with kids and in-laws and the whole package. But just remember that our ability to find love and to feel love is a product of ourselves much more than a product of anybody else. When you have a beautiful meditation, when you have a beautiful bhakti yoga devotion experience, whenever you have a beautiful spiritual experience of any kind, you'll notice that your ability to love others, not just your loved ones, but anyone, increases exponentially. Suddenly you find that you're able to love the waitress in the restaurant, the clerk in the store. That love is just overflowing. There's beautiful loving kindness meditations, metta meditations that are rooted in feeling love. First for people, of course, for whom it's easy to feel love, but then moving through what we call neutral people, your gardener, the clerk at the store, into even people you really don't like, enemies. And it's actually possible. So if we can generate love through a practice of meditation, if I can generate love for the clerk at the grocery store, for my gardener, for the guy who pumps my gas, and then even for enemies, well, can I harness some of that power to love someone I used to really love and who still really loves me? See whether you can make that your spiritual work, to see how much love you can generate. Because we're used to it just coming from outside. Oh my God, I see you, I love you. And that's great, no problem. But if you can learn to generate love on the inside, well, it's not officially a siddhi, but in my mind it would be like the most powerful one. And if I could generate love at any moment for any being, I can't even think of a greater power that I would want to have in life. So see if you can take that as your meditation. Yeah. Yes. Microphone. Idhar aayega bhaiya samne aage. accepted traditional form of grieving. The loved one dies, they are inconsolably crying for a long period of time, then slowly that dissipates. It's a little better. For some, that grief arrives and arises in completely different ways. Neither is right. Neither is wrong. What matters most is that we create the space for us to feel whatever arises in the moment. So what I would say is, first of all, make sure that you're not keeping yourself overly busy just so that you're not grieving. We do see this a lot. Loved one dies, and suddenly we go into high gear. I'll plan this, gotta feed these people, set this, do that. And on the one hand, it's very helpful in the first couple of days to have logistic things to focus on. But there needs to come a time where you stop running around being busy and actually let yourself just experience whatever you're experiencing. And again, it may be sobs. It may not be. It may be a quiet, single tear that arises every now and then. It may be tearless. It may be actually just love. Joy that you had them. Every once in a while, a sense of deep longing for them. Maybe that's when the tears arise. But whatever it is that arises whenever it arises is exactly right. Don't give yourself any timeline. You know, people a lot of times come and say, God, it's been 3 months, 6 months, 3 years, 6 years, whatever it's been, I should be done by now. We never actually are done with grief. It changes us. And we allow ourselves to be changed. That loved one was a part of you energetically. Now that they're no longer here physically, we actually absorb them energetically. And that's a shift in our energy. I used to relate to them over there. Now I have to relate to them in here. And so there's a shift where now they are in terms of lessons, you know, the dilemma with looking for lessons. On the one hand, yes, I believe that there's lessons in everything, that we're here to learn, to grow. And yet the dilemma is when we focus on looking for the lesson, see, lesson is a very mental thing. That takes me out of my heart into my mind. What's the lesson? What am I going to learn? Well, grief is in the heart. Love is in the heart. Longing is in the heart. And every time I pull myself out of my heart into my head to figure out what I'm going to learn, I'm shortcutting and bypassing my grieving process. So I'd say whatever you're meant to learn, you will automatically learn. You can't help but not learn. But stay in your heart. Don't let the mind do what the mind is so good at doing, which is trying to co-opt every moment as an opportunity for the mind to just do its thing. Stay in your heart. And just allow that experience. Let that be the lesson. Can I just sit in my heart? How to do that? How to just be? How to just feel? How to just allow? Because so many things arise. It's sadness, then it's anger, then it's joy. Because when you think about them, it's joy. And then maybe you even laugh. And then you remember they're not here, and then there's another tear. And then maybe you're angry at the universe for taking them, or them for making a decision that you wish they hadn't made so they would still be here. And it just, they're waves, and they just come. And just be with it. Let your lesson be, I'm okay. Whatever it is that's arising is exactly perfect. And all I need to do, my only lesson, is to stay in my heart. And to allow it to be there. Yeah. Beautiful. We will take the question from our online audience first tomorrow. Tell them we'll start with their question tomorrow. Wonderful. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evenings. A beautiful morning and day to our family joining us from all over the world. And I look so forward to being together with you all tomorrow. And so much love.